Hello and welcome to something new from me. This is part of the My Journey podcast, and we're up to episode 30, and I'm trying something a bit different. Now, I'm recording this both on the audio for the podcast and video for my YouTube channel. And the reason this has come about is because I want to make more of my YouTube channel. I want to provide more content on there. So there's going to be this, which is part of the My Journey podcast, and other videos on there. So whichever platform you're consuming this on, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just search for Matt Johnson on YouTube and I should come up. There I'm going to be sharing a whole host of different business related videos. But in terms of the podcast, me and Tom are still going to carry on doing our fortnightly randomized topics, catching up about what we've been up to, and odd bits thrown in here and there, maybe the odd interview. But I wanted a space to do something a little bit different. Wanted a space to dive a bit deeper into some topics that me and Tom might not cover because they're maybe too entrepreneurship focused, too specific to me and my freelance journey. And to kick that off, we've been talking about a topic recently. It's come up a few times in my updates about me getting new clients. And I've got a new client which I've just signed in the last couple of weeks, and I'm in talks with another client at the moment, which hopefully should probably kick off in the next week or so. And it got me thinking about this question about how do I get my clients, and specifically today I want to go into how I got my first ever client. But before that, I just want to clarify a few things with regards to the podcast. Obviously, this is episode 30 of the My Journey podcast. If this is your first time listening to this or watching on YouTube, please go back and check out some of our old stuff. It started off as a careers podcast. I wanted to find out how people have built their personal brands, hear about their journeys to where they are today. And there's some really great interviews from episodes 1 to about 13, I believe. And then after that, Tom comes on board and we change the format a bit and we discuss business related topics every fortnight, randomized topics, and we kind of just do a deep dive into them. I talk about my experiences from a freelance entrepreneur kind of point of view, and Tom takes his view where he can from his apprenticeship, working a 9 to 5 kind of route. And it makes for some interesting conversations. There are some topics as well where I've just done a specific deep dive on social media, but I felt like this was a place there was something missing. I wasn't maybe exploring my journey in as much detail. We do our little catch up at the beginning, but I wanted a space to maybe dive into that a bit more and talk specifically about my experiences and what I've learned along the way. So that's what this is here for. Every other week, I'm going to be releasing one of these, fingers crossed, and it's going to be a bit of a deep dive into a topic that links directly to my journey. Me and Tom will be carrying on the normal episodes on the in-between weeks, so don't worry, Tom is still going to be part of the podcast. So as I say, today I'm going to deep dive into how I got my first customers, and one of the topics I've already written down for a future one is how I get customers now. As with the main podcast, if there's anything you would like me to cover on this, just let me know. They're going to be much shorter episodes because it is just me, but hopefully still hold a lot of value for you guys. So let's get into it. How did I get my first customer? Well, it's an odd one because I kind of see it as having 2 clients as my first client. The first client I got officially, I believe, it was almost over 2 years ago now, a company called Absolutely Cultured, who were the legacy company for Hull UK City of Culture 2017, where I had worked. And I'd worked for them until the March of 2018, before I went back and finished my degree at university. And when I finished university, I went straight to freelancing, and I got a call from the team that were still there to say, and some new members of the team to say, would you be able to come in and help us? We need someone who knows how things were before, and you're a freelancer, it works quite well for us in terms of you're not looking for a full-time job. We can just dip in and out as you needed. And I was supposed to be there for a month at the beginning, but I ended up staying much longer. I think it was about 9 months. I did some work with them in different ways, helping out different parts, the gallery, the main body of the company. And that was really good. And I think they were officially my first customer, which was really cool to have a company like that on my portfolio to say, this is my first client, was pretty cool. But they weren't exactly what I was after. I was kind of supporting somebody else and helping them achieve their vision, which is kind of what I do now, but it was a bit more like I was still working there, which was great. I learned a lot while I was there as well, especially working under new people, seeing how they worked. Really, really fascinating. But my first client, where it was like me doing social media marketing for them, that was the only thing I was doing, that was my role, that was why I was brought in, was a company who are a gin producer in Hull, and they do like gin experiences, called Hodham's Gin School. And this is a really odd one. I've been doing lots of cold calling, cold emailing and stuff, and not getting much of a response. And I'd decided that I'd had a few leads in the way at the time, in terms of talking to people I knew and networking and stuff like that. But these were the first guys to sign on the dotted line as a client, so to speak. And how I got on was, there was Pride taking place in Hull, and I thought, I'm quite into my photography, so I thought I'd head into town and take some photos. Well, unbeknownst to me, I'd completely missed the parade, didn't see any of it, so just went around town taking a few photos, and thought I'll pop into a bar and get a drink. And then, I don't know if it was the drink or I don't know, but I got a bit of courage and I decided to go around businesses and just talk my wares a bit and kind of speak to them about what I did. So I'd seen on Snapchat that one of my friends, who doesn't actually live around here anymore, happened to be in Hull, so I thought, well, I'll head in that direction, and if I bump into him, that's great, and if not, I'm just going to businesses along the way that I think would be cool to work with. And I went in a couple, didn't really get a response, or the manager's not in today, that kind of thing. And then I decided to go into Hodham's Gin School, and I just put my head in and basically said, look, I do social media marketing. Would you be interested in it? And they went, yeah, that's exactly what we need right at the moment. That's exactly what we need. Leave us your details. I took their details, drop us an email kind of thing, and we'll get going. And I think within that next week, I was working at Absolutely Cultured, who weren't too far away. So I popped over on my lunch break and just spoke to them a bit more about it, and said I'd do their social media for them. Now, I only worked for them for about 3 months, so that was all we agreed, and it was while they were going through a busy period. But it was really odd that I think you see a lot of stuff out there that says about how to get your first client, and I don't know if that's a route anyone's been told to take before, which is just popping into businesses on the odd chance during your afternoon off. I don't know, but that's how it worked for me, and I just thought it'd be really interesting to share that story with you guys, that actually now I get clients probably in a more traditional way, and like I say, I will go into that in a future episode. But my first ever client was one through my old company asking me to go in and work for them. Not too uncommon in the world of freelancing, to be fair. If people have gone freelancing, sometimes their old company will take them on to do a little bit of work for them. But my first, I regard as like my proper client, my first freelancing type of client, like proper, like this is my client, I've got them myself, was just through popping into a bar on a afternoon. I did think they were that at the time, and they're not even a bar. I just popped in, and I don't think I was supposed to pop in. I think they were closed. But yeah, a really, really interesting way of getting them. A few things I learned from my time working with both different types of client was it really made me aware of what I wanted to do. I wanted to do the stuff that I was doing for Hotham, that kind of more just focusing on their social media, having a number of clients, and doing it more on a monthly basis rather than so many hours a week, spending full days in an office. That's not what I wanted. I felt too much like an employee. Even though I was on freelance terms, I felt too much like an employee at Absolutely Cultured. But the other thing that it taught me was about how them two things can work together, because I'd thought that wasn't possible. I remember sitting and speaking to one of my old colleagues about potentially taking the job at Absolutely Cultured, and I was like, yeah, but then that means I can't freelance. And actually, you don't realise how much time you've got to fill as a freelancer when you're starting out, how many clients you need. Like, I thought I'd be able to survive on much fewer clients than I probably in reality needed, and I thought they'd take up a lot more time than they did. But actually, when you get into your processes and ways of working, you can streamline things quite nicely. And that's why a lot of people talk about not valuing yourself in terms of time but more outcomes, which is something I totally agree with, and I've been learning a lot more about myself. And again, something for a future episode. Pricing, it's definitely a tough one. But yeah, I'd love to hear other people's stories about how they got their first clients, if they're a freelancer, or if you're starting out freelancing, how you think you're going to get your first client. I would say the one thing I did learn was try everything, because some of the other stuff that was going on in the background, like the cold calling, cold emailing, networking, they all led to clients in different ways at different points throughout my journey, especially at the beginning. So don't rule out any one avenue. I just thought I'd share my story about how I got my first client, because I think it is quite an interesting story, and not maybe the ones you hear from like traditional routes and motivational speakers and stuff like that, and maybe business gurus who are saying spend on certain networking events or ad spend and that kind of thing. I think they are all great options, but that is how I did it. So yeah, for today, thank you for tuning in, however that is, on the podcast on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe if you've not checked out the podcast before. Make sure to go back and look at some of my old episodes. And if you're on YouTube, make sure to check out some of my old content. It is mainly my podcast at the moment, but hopefully I'll be able to bring you some more valuable content. Is there anything you want to see? Leave a comment down below if you're on YouTube, and message me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at the MJ Social if you're listening to the pod. Let me know what you think to this new format. I think it's going to work quite nicely. Fill the weeks in between, give you guys a bit more to take in. But if it's not working for you guys, let me know. We'll be back hopefully next week with both me and Tom round the mic discussing a randomised topic. But until next time, thanks for tuning in.